What's new? It's Blue. Hey guys, it's another Meet My OCs Dog Days edition, and we're back with the final main of the Dog Days bunch. Aww. But next week I'll give the various side characters their own video and discuss them in that one. So this week it's Yua. Yay! She's Fumi's neighbor and unofficial guardian in the city. She's definitely a main character, but more of a supporting one, if that makes sense. And she took Minato's place in the main hierarchy simply just because she has more going on. If I'm very honest, love Minato and everything, but I was struggling to find ways to give him something substantial. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So, as a plot recap, Yua works at the shelter that both of her aunts own on weekends, and during the week she works at her full-time job at a tattoo and piercing studio. In regards to the shelter, they also involve their buddies to come and help. So whenever some of her friends are free, she'll be like, oh, come over, let's help at the shelter. And they mainly do that on weekends because that's when her shelter days are as well. And she then meets Fumi, who moved into the small unit next to hers, and at first she kind of just takes notice of her until one day she sees Fumi by herself on the rooftop, kind of just seeming really down, looking like she had just been crying. And she's like, damn, I can't just walk past and act like I didn't see that, otherwise I'd be the biggest asshole ever, imagine. So she basically goes and is kind of awkwardly are you okay, ? And then they start talking, and Fumi is kind of a blabbermouth, so when she starts talking, she just starts yapping. She's like, girl, I'm feeling this about this, and she's just telling her how she's feeling and how she just moved to the city from the countryside after being there for a little bit, and she feels really lonely because in moving she had to leave her close family and friends behind. I'd mentioned her cousin Tristan, his whole friend group. I'll talk about their world one of these days. Fumi stayed with them for a while, so those people really became found family to her and her support system, especially right after she had just lost her parents. So leaving them at first was very hard because she lost that support system. So she was just telling Yua about that, and the rooftop of their building unintentionally is where a lot of introspection happens. I didn't even mean that, but I like the visual potential of that. So Yua basically just lets her talk and tells her that Yua's a very practical person. She tells her that if she's lonely, she should do something about it. Find someone at school or wherever, pick someone that she thinks is interesting and be their friend. And Fumi's like, you know what, no, because you're so right, actually I should just do that. And that kind of snapped her out of her little sad funk, and she goes back into her usual demeanor, which is very optimistic, as we know with Fumi. And after that, Fumi's quite friendly with Yua. It's almost now she's practicing that on Yua. She'll say good morning when she sees her. She'll hand her mail to her if she sees her, that kind of thing. And Yua in turn develops an affection for Fumi because Fumi's just very lovable. So sometimes Fumi will be I don't understand this homework, especially maths. She's help me with this, and Yua's pretty okay with that kind of stuff. So she's okay, sure. So she'll help her with her homework. They'll each talk about where they grew up. Yua will tell her about how she also moved to the city, that kind of thing. And I also imagine that they tend to have dinner together a lot unintentionally. At first it's Yua dropping off food for Fumi to make sure that she actually eats a hot meal because she's living alone and she knows that sometimes school can get busy and Fumi's kind of scatterbrained. So dropping off food for her, and then it turns into Fumi then being oh, come and eat with me. So then they'll just typically eat dinners together, and they become very found family coded, and I love that for them. So that's their whole routine and how they get to know each other, and it's very sweet. And then Yua meets the Egamis, and her and Mirai hit it off as well. And Yua finds Mirai just very interesting. She finds Mirai kind of all over the place, but in a way that makes her just intriguing to watch. And they become very close working at the shelter. Eventually Mirai stopping by the shop after her shifts and stuff like that. And I also imagine the headcanon, this is the literal reason why I decided to make her a tattooist as well. I decided that because Mirai's like has like a big back tattoo, right, of like the whole like butterfly flowery thing. It's kind of vague. I'll hammer down the design. And I decided that Yua, when Mirai told her that she has a fear of sharp objects, needles and stuff included, that's why she doesn't even have that many piercings, she takes it upon herself. She's like, no, we can't have that. And she's like, do you actually want that stuff? And she's like, yeah, I would, but I don't like sharp objects. So she helps Mirai conquer her fear, and she gives Mirai her first tattoo. And just as a comforting piece, she's like, you know what, I'll get a matching one as well, because you already has like a bunch. Like, I guess like if we're looking at in terms of like tattooed people, Yua doesn't have like the most, but she is fairly tatted up, I guess. So she's like, I'll get a matching one. So she gets like a little piece added to an existing one that she already has that matches like Mirai's whole thing, because Mirai's goes like from like her upper back onto like that back part of her arm, and Yua's one goes from like an existing piece that was on her collarbone down the front of her arm. So I'll probably insert like a little picture. I'll draw up what it is I'm talking about so it's less confusing. So that's their matching thing, and that's very cute. I love that idea so much. When I first thought of that, I literally thought of it yesterday. I like jumped up in my chair and I like clapped my hands together because I was like, that is genius. So yeah. Also, Fumi gets her piercings done at US shop because I said so, and I just think that's very cute. I imagine all the characters, if they're like, oh, I want earrings or I want this, they'll be like, girl, let's just head to US shop and we'll get a family and friends discount. So yeah, that's the plot from US perspective. Also, just like, you know, as things with the shelter go on, just I imagine they would like take maybe some of the kids who like stay at the shelter more full time to the countryside, to the coast, something sweet like that. And once Mirai brings in that funding, they're able to really like, you know, hammer out the shelter more. And Yua feels very strongly about the shelter. That's why she puts a fair amount of her time into it, you know. It's not just like, oh, a couple of hours type thing. Like on weekends and during the week when she has time, she'll literally go from work, check on things at the shelter, and then go back home, that kind of thing. So she's kind of a busy person, actually. She's all over the place, but like in a very organized manner. Like it's busy, but it's a busy that she likes. She's not unsatisfied with her life. She's very content where she is right now. And I think that's what makes her just a very comforting presence for other people, because she's not like haphazard and all that. She's very zen. You know, that's just the kind of person Yua is. And she sees how much her aunts pour into the shelter, and she feels very strongly about it as well, and thinks that it's, you know, a good thing for, you know, the kids and stuff who might be a bit lonely or who have nowhere to go, or who feel like they don't have anywhere to turn to. So that's Yua. And now let's get into them as a character. Their full name is Kensuke Yua. She's 22. My bad, she's 23 and she's 5'4". Pronouns are they, she, and they have kind of like split dyed hair and brown eyes. And the split dyed thing, that might still apply depending on how I tweak the design between like now and I'm recording this and then when I do her piece. Her style is kind of alt-ish, I suppose. Like she loves that like cutout kind of clothing, you know, like clothes with keyholes and cutouts and that whole kind of thing. And it's kind of like, I guess, a wee bit androgynous, I don't know. And I'm realizing they're the only character who wears glasses here. Now that I think about it, I actually don't have that many characters who wear glasses, which is strange because I wear glasses, but whatever. So Yua is one of my fewer new OCs. I don't make like new OCs that often. A lot of my OCs are OCs that I've had for a while and I've just like grown with, if that makes sense. But Yua is one of my fewer like new OCs. I think I only made her like 2 years ago. And that was when I started entertaining the whole gang idea. And she was originally going to be one of the gang members. And then I scrapped that idea. But originally her and Mirai had like a whole will they, won't they thing. I don't know if you can kind of tell. I think I'm fairly obvious with it. But again, I'm a big fan. I'm a big proponent of the slow burn thing. You know, especially with Mirai. It's not a relationship that immediately turns into something else, you know. It's a very slow and patient relationship. So imagine if something were romantic were to come of the two of them, it would happen later on down the road. As of right now, they're just good friends. And Mirai does think Yua is very pretty because Yua is very pretty. Look at her. But anyways, so they had a will they, won't they thing going. So I did know that I wanted to keep her in this iteration of the plot and make her and Mirai especially a complementary pair. But then I'm glad that I'm finding ways to connect her with other people apart from just Mirai, like Fumi. I think that's important. So, you know, it's not like she's just there to be an eventual love interest. She's playing a part in multiple people's lives, like her aunt's lives, the kids at the shelter, Fumi, and Mirai. So I think that's quite nice. And Yua's personality, being the way that she is, it's almost like a litmus test of sorts. Like, people either love her or hate her, that kind of thing. So she doesn't have like that many friends, you know, but she has a couple like from high school and also regular customers from the shop that she gets along with, and then Mirai and Fumi. And I can't imagine, like, I think her and Hikari would talk, especially as her and Mirai get closer. So maybe Hikari even at some point. I imagine she'd also find Hikari a bit endearing since Hikari and Fumi are involved all the time. They're like besties, so you know. And like, she's just the kind of person who is very like straightforward. To her, nothing is that deep. Like, for lack of a better word, she's nonchalant, you know. The nonchalant dreadhead memes are so funny. Well, obviously she's not a dreadhead, but what am I saying? I'm just trying to say she's nonchalant. Can you tell how brain rotted I am? Goodness gracious. So she's pretty nonchalant. Like, nothing is that serious if she's being honest. Like, she's not fast. She's a very simple person. Like, even Mirai's like, oh my gosh, I literally feel like jumping off a bridge, and she's like, well, don't. She's like, do something about that then. Do something. Which, yeah, fair enough. I feel like sometimes it's like, you know, just making things not that serious can help. So that's the kind of person that Yua is. And she had a very straightforward and simple life. They also moved to the city to stay with their aunts when she was about 16. So for her whole, like, high school, she went to junior high in the rural countryside, and then she was like, nah, F this, and moved to the city. But I imagine since moving to the city, she would have grown like a lot more fond and like having some more like love for where she grew up. And like, I also imagine that if then she's from like a more rural area and she moved to the city when she was 16, that she has like a bit of an accent or a dialect. And maybe when she first came, when people would point it out, she was like, oh, I don't know how to feel about that. But now I imagine she's quite proud of it. She doesn't like try to change how she speaks or anything like that. So again, I'd have to do research to see exactly what dialect, because even though I've been learning Japanese on and off for a couple of years, if you told me that, oh, this person's speaking in a dialect, I wouldn't be able to tell. My listening skills are not that great. Reading, okay, sure, I can like, you know, figure it out from there, but I'd love to be able to tell the difference between dialects, because the way that like people talk about them sometimes, it seems like it's like a huge difference. So I'd like to pick that up. So I imagine that she has an accent. And she went to high school in the city. Like I said, she moved up to her auntie's. And being a very arty person, she considered going to art school, but chose instead to not go to like any kind of university and just go straight into it by becoming a piercer and a tattoo artist. And like in high school, she would always get in trouble for like violating uniform guidelines. And parents of like friends or acquaintances that she would be trying to make would always judge her off of how she looked. So then people would kind of then distance from her just because of how she looked. And again, for her, it's like, okay, it's not that serious. Now I know not to talk to them, you know, like she doesn't really take anything to heart. Things just slide off. It's never that serious. And after, like, straight out of high school, she immediately goes into an apprenticeship at like a really nice studio that she'd been looking at, a shop that she had been going to herself. And then after like a couple of years, like, she becomes a full-time employee. And being like a piercing apprentice and a tattoo like apprentice, I don't know if it's possible to do those both at the same time, but from the little research that I've done, I think it is. It's just definitely a lot of work. So it was a very busy couple of years. And during that time, she watched like as her aunts were like building up their shelter. It was a passion project of theirs. So like, she would help them with building stuff, repairs to things, maybe going on errands, taking mail to people, that kind of thing. And like, she also got emotionally invested in it, watching them build and pour their blood, sweat, and tears into it for like years. So doing the whole shelter thing, but then also being like a piercer and a tattoo artist like full time was like a lot of work. But again, she's very happy with her life. She's not a unsatisfied person in the slightest. And with Fumi as well, she's another reason she's very fond of Fumi, apart from just like, her general disposition. Fumi's a very lovable person. She's been in Fumi's place, except she realizes that like even when she was going through that whole like, new thing of coming to a new area, the big city type thing, like she wasn't alone. Luckily, she had her aunts. Whereas Fumi is alone right now, and she's moving away from her support system that had her back, that whole thing. So she likes to be there for Fumi in whatever way that like she might need, whether that be being a listening ear or advice, that kind of thing. I just think their relationship is very sweet. It's very found family. And yeah, Yua's just someone who's very content with life right now. You can tell that she's well adjusted, unlike the rest of them. Unlike all the Igamis who need bloody therapy, Yua's just like chill, actually. She doesn't even have any like hectic trauma. Like, she's like, I guess then if I'm like trying to find like, okay, something like she like bonds more with her aunts, I suppose, because her aunts are very supportive more than like her parents. Her parents are fine. They're like they're back home, and she visits them like every summer, I imagine. So yeah, and like I guess you could say that she's not like super duper close with them, but they're close enough. Like they get along. There's no like animosity there or like strained weirdness. I'd say just you as a person, she's not the most talkative, and both her parents are pretty similar like that. So they don't necessarily talk a lot, but not like in a bad way. That's just how they are as people. How they show their love for each other is through action. So when they see each other, it'll be somebody cutting up fruit for you, or someone bringing you a souvenir from work, that kind of thing. Like, it's the little things is how she speaks to her parents, which I think is very sweet. So yeah, that's Yua just as a person, and that's also the role that they play in the plot. They really have an impact on people for the better, I'd say. Again, I'd mentioned before when I was talking about the plot, because they're such a very relaxed and nonchalant and very just low energy person, they unintentionally are very calming. So other people find a lot of comfort in them. Some people find them a bit unnerving, because talking to Yua is like, it kind of makes you like expose yourself a little bit, because she's not gonna say anything or force herself to say anything. So like, she'll just be letting you talk, and that can make some people uncomfortable. Like Mira at first, it made her uncomfortable. But then she realized that like she just liked Yua enough that she was willing to put up with that initial discomfort, and then they managed to get close beyond that. So now it's no longer a thing of like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable talking to you because you make me like feel vulnerable, And that's nice for Yua. For Yua, it's also nice to be seen and acknowledged. Someone not telling her all the things that she should change, or being like, oh, why don't you do this more? Why don't you smile more? Why don't you talk more? Why don't you do this? Mira just kind of like accepts her as she is, which is nice. They're very good for each other. So not only does she have a good impact on people, other people have a good impact on her. Also Fumi will also check up on her, insist that they eat dinner, take a break from this, because again, her life is quite busy. So sometimes she can be bad at like regulating, like, okay, when to rest and when to not continue working, So yeah, everyone just they all just slot together very nicely, and it's just very sweet. I love how well they all complement each other. It makes me very happy. So that's Yua. And now let's move into audience submissions. Our last audience submissions for the mains. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm almost sad. But anyways, I really enjoyed doing audience submissions. Like, your guys' questions are always really nice, and they also help me flesh things out more. Like Like even the whole plot point about you are giving Mirai her first like tattoo to help overcome like her fear of sharp objects. I even decided that she had a fear of sharp objects because of a question that was submitted. Somebody asked like what's her fear, and I made it up on the spot. Then I'm like, wait, I can actually work with this. So I love the questions. They help me make little details, and the little details are my favorite part of everything. So let's get into the audience submissions. So now on to audience submissions. Yay. So this is going to be the last audience submissions for Dog Days. For the side characters, I don't think that I'll take audience submissions. I don't know, in case I change my mind, maybe I will. But as of right now, this is the last audience submissions because Yua is our last MC. So let's get right into it. So the first question is from user your.fave.swifty. Hi. And they asked what was their first piercing and why did they decide to get it? Also, do they have any pets? So Yua's first piercing was probably just their initial lobes. So like I'd like to think that she was one of those kids who got them later on, because like myself included, I got them when I was like my first piercing when I was like 4. So I'd like to think that she got hers maybe like age 10 or so. So like I'd like to think that their mom wasn't like necessarily in a rush to do that, and they waited until like, you know, and like her mom waited until like she actually voiced that want, like, oh, I want earrings, and then, you know, she took her to the to the pharmacy or something like that. I don't know. So yeah, her first piercing was probably her lobes, but like her first like maybe piercing would have been like her nostril, which I would like to think she got at like age 14 or 15. Yeah. And I imagine it was kind of an impromptu thing, and they got it simply because they thought it looked cool, and they are just a big piercing fan. I mean, that's their whole profession. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And also, no, Yua does not have any pets, though I might give her one. So I'm leaving that question open-ended. So yeah. Next question. User Dan DD Lion asked, what's a character in a show/movie that you'd say she's the most like? That's a very interesting one. So I would say like literally okay, if I'm like thinking of recent examples, I'm sorry, I've been watching Sign of Affection. She kind of makes me think of Itsuomi, I guess, just in the fact that simply because she's very blunt, and it's like she's not too like outwardly expressive, if that makes sense. She's not like too much of a hyper person, and she doesn't see the point in mincing her words or mincing how she feels about stuff. She's very like straightforward, I'd like to think. And another example would, I guess, be maybe like Laos. How do you say his name from Dungeon Meshi? Like, you know what I'm talking about if you've watched Dungeon Meshi. The girls love Dungeon Meshi these days. It's like I'd also think that Yua would be kind of similar to him, again, just in that bluntness, because I just think that is just like her main trait. She's just a very straightforward person. It's not that serious to her. And I'm also realizing she is also kind of autistic coded too. Okay, love that for her. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And then our last question is from user unknown_brainrod. Hello. And they actually asked a couple of questions, so yay. So their first question was, if she were to write a book/poem, what would the main theme be? Very interesting. So I feel like Yua would probably be more of like a poem person. So like stuff that kind of comes out in bursts rather than one big work, I feel like would be her thing. Like if she was like a fanfic writer, she'd write one shots and not like 500k word fics. So yeah. And it would probably be kind of exploring themes of change and time. She just finds that very interesting, and how people can change a lot and not change at all. I feel like she'd find that very interesting. So examination of the self would be the main theme. And question 2 question 2 was, would she rather chew off her own foot or lick a cheese grater? She would rather lick a cheese grater, I'm sure. She wouldn't be happy about it. You definitely have to hold her at GUN point. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that word on YouTube, so you never know. But you'd have to hold her at GUN point to make her do that. But if she had to choose life or death, cheese grater it is. And then the bonus question was, do they have one or a few favorite horror movies? Question mark, question mark. So funny enough, I feel like you would not be like a horror person, which I guess just from looking at her, maybe you would assume that, but to be honest, I don't think that would be like her thing. Like, though I feel like the closest to horror movie that she would like is something like Coraline. I don't know, Coraline just seems right up her alley. I imagine that maybe she saw it once when she was younger and she just loved it ever since. So yeah, Coraline is definitely one of her favorite movies. So yeah, those are all our questions for today. And thank you guys once again. I really love the audience submissions. And yeah, let's move on to the outro. Okay guys, that was today's MC, and I really hope that you've enjoyed the video. Here are her finished pieces, including the meme that describes her. I literally just found this picture of Willem Dafoe and it made me laugh so hard because, I don't know, just the straight face, puffing a cigarette, the rotten oranges. It's like, why is he holding those oranges? I don't know. I just feel like it's so random and it's right up yours alley. So, and yeah, I really hope that you guys have enjoyed my Dog Days characters, and I hope you guys find these characters as interesting as I do. And yeah, I think it's definitely a good time to move on. Neurodivergency, my brain is starting to like, I've already checked out, if I'm honest. Like, I'm ready to move on to something else. I feel like I've just been drawing Dog Days for so long. Not that that's a problem, but I don't know, I'm just ready to be doing something else. So next week's video will be something random probably, so look forward to that. And I don't know what's been going on recently, but I don't know, I feel like I haven't been getting as much reach lately. Like, I don't know, like, tell me guys if you feel like you're not seeing my posts as much. I don't know, I'd appreciate the feedback. But anyways, yeah, so that was the series, and I will be doing another Meet My OC series with another world of mine at some point, a bit on from now. I do have a couple of videos that I'd like to do first. Someone had actually asked in one of my community posts if I could do a video talking about how I design characters, so I'll definitely do that. Like, and yeah, as usual, if you like this video, feel free to like this video, and don't forget to comment and subscribe and turn on the notification bell to keep up with me so that you don't miss any of my posts, shorts, community tabs, what have you. I like chatting with you guys over there, it's really fun. And yeah, in the description you'll find various resources. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and the series and my characters, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.